Hey guys, damn, gold was or has been on a crazy ride recently. At some points over the last 2 days, it almost looked like we were just never going to come back forever. um, but yeah, that's how it is with gold sometimes. So today's video, I want to talk about some different possibilities as to what caused this huge sell-off, right, in gold. Um, I mean, honestly, since the inflation data came out and we initially had that run up to 1900, wow, we saw almost yeah, basically a $55 dip in the price of gold. Sorry, water. So, want to discuss like the different possibilities or different potential causes, which, I'm not saying that it's like one individual thing or not, but it could be also a combination of, it's like a perfect storm of all these different causes and potential reasons why gold sold off so strongly over the last 2 days, and we're going to go through those, okay? So the first reason, of course, is regarding the actual inflation data that came out last week. So as I mentioned in my inflation video before, typically when inflation is higher than expected, it's actually bullish for the dollar because it typically leads to then some sort of policy by the Fed or the central bank to counteract the high inflation, whether that's tapering asset purchases or whether it's raising interest rates. And initially, when we had that crazy volatility swing, I'm looking at the 4-hour chart right now. When we had that initial crazy volatility swing, when the data came out, it really looked like, remember at first, it started going down. But we got actually that crazy volatility. And one point, we actually started going back up. And so at the time, I think it fooled a lot of people, including me, in that it looked like the market maybe wanted to decide its direction. And it was more like, wow, investors, I guess, aren't confident that even though the inflation data is so high, that the Fed will counteract it by talking about minimizing asset purchases and potentially raising interest rates at the Fed meeting this week. But sure enough, when we hit 1900, we definitely got that strong sell-off, and a lot of the media right now is really pushing the narrative that this is definitely a reaction to the inflation data, and that investors or traders are kind of waiting now, or kind of expecting that the Fed is going to mention something now that we've seen inflation at a crazy 5%, right? So that could be one of the possible reasons, right? I think we have to remember, and this is one thing that I was kind of being silly about, was that, especially when big data like inflation comes out, CPI data, sometimes it can initially cause this crazy volatility, which kind of shows almost no direction. Like a 1 minute is going up, the next minute is going down. And maybe that's what we initially saw here. But it typically tends to be that over the coming days and potentially weeks is when the true direction of the market ends up going as a result of the data. And that's probably what we kind of saw here, right? Where we saw these then next few days a pretty strong sell-off, just like we saw last time in May. So the inflation data could have definitely been a cause for this massive sell-off, right? Another thing, of course, that we have to consider is the correlation now between Bitcoin and gold. It seems like there is a pretty strong correlation between money moving from gold into Bitcoin and vice versa, right? When Bitcoin is starting to go up, money will shift from gold into Bitcoin. When Bitcoin starts going down, money will shift back into gold, especially when gold is going up. So it seems like, the traders who are trading gold are also people who have trades or investments in Bitcoin. And as we know, over the past few days, especially if we look at the day chart, Bitcoin has actually seen some sort of recovery, right? Um, what has caused this? Or is this just a relief rally? I'll probably do another video on this later today. Obviously, we had the El Salvador news. We had that initial breakdown out of this wedge, but we got the strong bounce on 30,000 again. And then with that news, and then also there's the Elon tweet and all this shit, right? Now we're at the position where Bitcoin is at the higher range now, again, higher range of this channel that we were essentially kind of bouncing around where this wedge was kind of forming within, right? Between 30,000, which seems to be a pretty strong floor, and this 42,000, this previous resistance level, which is proving to be pretty strong now here as well, right? But now we're at the upper end of it, and now we're at this critical point. But right now, for the last few days, Bitcoin price action has kind of jumped back into being slightly more bullish looking, though I still would be very hesitant to call this a full recovery at this point. I definitely don't think we're there yet, right? But as a result, it could be a situation where liquidity over the last few days, right, has gone, right? These are the last 2 days here in Bitcoin, has shifted from gold, which was now at like these high, pretty, gold had had a really big run up, right? If we go back to the gold chart, gold had had a really, really big run up over the last few weeks, right? So naturally, there was probably some profit taking maybe, and then therefore liquidity was shifting from gold back into Bitcoin, which was maybe at a lower price than its, kind of all-time highs, as they say. So that could have been another reason why we got that dump. There was a shift in liquidity from gold to Bitcoin. Okay. The third reason, which I don't actually see mentioned a lot, but as we have known from, or as I personally know, and then most of us know who've been following gold price for a while, has a big effect. There was big vaccine news over the weekend, right? G7 announced, let me pull up the article here. The G7, sorry, just give me a second. Oh, there we go. There's been the G7 summit happening in Cornwall, right, over the last few days. And the G7 basically released on Monday, they made an announcement saying that they're going to promise 1 billion COVID vaccine doses to poor nations, which obviously is a signal of us recovering, or globally us recovering out of the pandemic. And as we've seen typically with gold price, gold really reacts strongly to vaccine use, okay? In any situations of global wars, global pandemics, all these types of things, right? When the news is, kind of in favor, let's say, of the negative news, right? So when it's very, very negative, gold price will go up. Fear drives gold price, right? That's the one correlation which has held true for a long time recently. Fear drives gold price, and then when fear starts going away, for example, with vaccine news, it can definitely lead to a sell-off in gold price. And with that news coming out on Monday, it kind of is for me personally. I haven't seen a lot of people mention this, but for me personally, it really kind of looked like, wow, that could have also triggered a stronger sell-off on the gold side. Okay, there definitely is a strong correlation between COVID and the vaccines and all that kind of shit with gold price. Okay, so that was definitely something to consider. Let me pull up my notes here because I have a few other things that I want to talk about. Right. So reason number 4 is also regarding certain technical patterns, right? Um, I mean, first of all, again, I've mentioned this a bunch of times in last previous videos, but price never just goes up like this, okay, without having some sort of pullback. And the reality is that especially since about the beginning of May, we have seen a really strong run up in the price of gold, right? I mean, really, since even this double bottom here back in the 1600s, right? I mean, realistically, like we've seen a very, very, very strong bullish run up and bullish momentum in the price of gold. And the reality is that we were getting to a point where it was starting to reach, previous all-time highs, and probably people were starting to look at taking profits. And when people want to start taking profits on their positions, naturally we're going to see pullbacks. And you could definitely start seeing, for example, on the hour chart, as multiple people have mentioned on various trading platforms, the formation of head and shoulders patterns, two of them, right, over here and kind of over here, right? I mean, technical patterns are always, to the eyes of the beholder, but you could definitely just see overall that maybe the market was extended and it was probably about time for a pullback. We were starting to see wilder volatility in terms of the drops that we were getting in gold. And this probably was no other exception, the reality is that in order for us to continue, especially if we want to be more bullish in gold, right, as we currently are in the longer term, in order for us to really start building up to those levels, right, there's still going to need to be pullbacks in price all the time. And that's why you have to really, it's not just about choosing your direction or your bias, like are you bullish or bearish on gold or bullish or bearish on dollar, but you also have to manage your risk. That's why, because naturally pullbacks are going to happen, and it's very hard to predict when these pullbacks are really going to happen. So maybe this was just a natural technical pullback, right? Sometimes there doesn't need to be a reason for everything, right? And we have to also understand one last thing, which kind of goes into a fifth reason, and like something which I hope people are really understanding about the market, especially if you're more of a beginner looking at gold. There's an expression about gold where they say that gold tends to go up in steps but drop like a brick. And the reason that's true, right, is because you have a lot of inexperienced traders trading an asset like gold on leverage, okay? Especially during a period where the whole market is clearly bullish. I mean, at this point, you could be a total noob or a total idiot and realize that the market was bullish, right? And then if you're taking over leveraged positions with account sizes that cannot match such a position when it goes against them, you're going to get this almost cascading effect. I call this the cascade waterfall of death, okay? Meaning people just kept on getting liquidated, 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 liquidated. And that's what causes these types of sharp or steep sell-offs in the price of gold, even though potentially overall in the longer term, you're still bullish, right? Or gold is still in a bullish trend, or that the dollar is still in a bearish trend, right? So we have to remember that sometimes these things, markets can be manipulated quite easily by larger players. And when there is a big sell-off or when there is profit taking, it can lead to kind of these larger mass liquidation events, especially in an asset like gold, which clearly a lot of people, right? It's not a lot of people are not that experienced who trade this asset and are over leveraged on certain positions with account sizes that are not big enough. Look, I'm not saying you necessarily have to use a stop loss, right? And this is one thing I just want to put out there as a side note. If you're a beginner listening to this, I'm not necessarily the world's biggest advocate for stop losses. I also like playing sometimes in a way where it's like I just open very small positions, but more of them, and because I'm trying to trade like a longer position, and you don't want to necessarily have those stop losses there. I totally get it. But again, even if you're not playing with a stop loss, it's really about managing your account size and understanding what kind of risk you're going to take. Because even if you're not putting a stop loss, right, an automated one, you better have at least a mental one. I always, at the very least, have a mental stop loss, and you need to understand and be very disciplined about that. Okay. But anyway, the point is that many people aren't disciplined about that, and this was what causes these sell-offs, which are like, you know, um, which is like a brick falling off a building when it comes to the price drop. Okay. So, anyways, long story short, we've had this long sell-off. We have all these potential reasons, right? It could be one particular reason. It could be all of them. It could be none of them. Maybe it's just general price, action. Who really knows? I think the important thing as well is to not like totally freak out or overanalyze when we get a drop like this, right? I think we need to still keep everything in perspective and look at the longer term here. And in terms of the longer term, well, at least in the next few days, we still have that big Fed event coming. We still have that event coming, right? That's happening on Wednesday, and that is definitely going to have a big effect on gold price. It's going to have a big effect on the dollar, and it's going to be a pretty good indication of how our biases should be over the coming days and weeks. Should we continue to be bullish on gold, or should we start becoming actually bearish on gold and bullish on dollar, right? That event's still going to be there. So as of right now, this sell-off, it's not really changing anything. Did I buy some of the dip? I certainly did. I opened the position. I waited for a bounce and I opened the position around 1855 as well. So I'm in there. But let's see how it goes, because I know that ultimately the Wednesday could go against me. So I do have the stop loss in place. Let's see how it goes though. That's really going to be still the key event that we're looking for. This initial 2-day sell-off isn't freaking me out too much. Don't forget, guys, as well, in terms of gold, today we also have two pretty big events. We have the news events coming out. We have the retail data coming out and the PPI, which is another inflation style data. This should have should cause some short-term volatility when the data comes out. I believe it's around 7:30 or so my time. So whatever that time is in the States, like normally about an hour before the market opening, but I'd have to double check that on investing.com. But either way, just be careful, guys, and be aware that tomorrow's the big day. And tomorrow, I'll try even do a live stream or at least release a video right after all the data comes out. And let's see what happens and what we can gather from that in terms of how gold is probably going to trend from a fundamental value over the next days and weeks. Anyways, if you like the content, please consider giving me a like. Um, it's been actually really fun doing this kind of videos. I definitely want to do more of them. Leave comments. I'm happy to engage. I'm happy to call you a dickhead too if you want to troll. Go fuck yourself. But either way, I'm pretty open, dude. So yeah, let's talk later.